Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a little after 6, a couple minutes maybe. Roll call, please.
Quisenberry.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Schwartz. Hartke. Kibler.
Here.
Maxwell.
Here.
James.
Here. Have a quorum. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes.
So moved.
Do we have any discussion? Dana, do you want to allude to those changes, please?
On page 3, under the Brookings generator, project discussion, paragraph 2, there. Sorry.
That would help.
Apologies. Page 3, Brookings generator project, second paragraph, second line, Mr. Brenner answered 60, and it was typed KV, it needs to be KW. And then further down the line, that the UPS is not, take out the not, it is supporting the same load as a generator would. Third paragraph, second line, Mr. Brenner answered no, not yes, to the question by Mr. Harkey about the election being hooked up to the generator. They will not be. They'll be moving if they do have a power outage. With my discussion with Gordy, their decision is to move out to county highway, to the meeting, host a meeting out there where that building is completely on generator backup. That was it.
Any other discussion?
Sorry, there was 2 additional changes, Dana, that I didn't get to you. On page 2, the Sheriff's Operations Master Planning, the 4th paragraph,
Do you have a line number?
line number 68, regarding an upside down pyramid. So the word down was missing from that line. And then on page 3, line 103, at the end of that sentence, after options, it should be options, comma, the first of which won't be exercised until the beginning of 2017. Thank you.
103 is at the very top.
The very,
It's hard to find those lines with the staples.
I love that. You just got to bend it faster. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Carries. Next, we have approval of agenda and addenda, if any, but I don't see any, so need a motion? Got to speak up, Gary. Second by Gary Maxwell. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign? No, it passes. Next, I have public participation. I don't have any slips, so I'm going to take that as nobody would wish to speak to us. So we'll pass that. Next is communications. I really don't have any unless anybody else does. Seeing none, that's that. Next, we're going to adjourn for a little bit of time, 15 to 20 minutes it looks like, to go over to the satellite so we can see firsthand what we're going to be discussing tonight and who's driving and who's walking.
Van, Deb and I will be driving,
Okay.
so should have enough room for everybody.
And I think John's going to drive Gary.
And John's going to drive Gary.
Okay. So let's adjourn for now and go over to there. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and we're on item 7, which we just did. And I also want to note that Josh Harkey is back and at the meeting now. So now we're going to move on to number 8, which ties in with number 7, and that's the approval of the contract for the concrete wall panel cracking investigation at the Champaign County Satellite Jail by Engineering Resource Associates Incorporated. Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Now I'm going to open it up for discussion. Any questions?
Some of the board members were not present. Josh, sorry to call you out, but several also were walking around on the other side as John started talking and taking us through the building, the panels, and where we're at. So I guess if we could ask John to just kind of recap again, and I apologize, John, but if you could recap again the panels, the problem, the process, and why the process is important at this juncture would be real helpful.
One quick thing though, John, if I may. In your estimation, when you said you toured the whole building outside and you looked around, would you say it's 80% damage, at least 80? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I have some handouts for the members of the committee, if I could pass those out. They're in pairs. They're in pairs. Yes, we did. Thank you. If you look at the first sheet that I gave you, that is a copy of the architect's drawings. And the detail there in the middle of the sheet shows a footing and shows the panel coming down, and then there was a little block out there near the bottom. And there was a plate that was placed in the footing with some vertical studs up into that would go up into the panel, and that would be grouted. That was the architect's concept of how a protected panel joint should be erected. Then if you look at the second sheet, you'll see a copy from these shop drawings, which Mr. Brenner found in your archives, that shows how it was actually constructed. And so you will see the footing, and then you'll see the panel, that's those two vertical lines. And then between the footing and the panel, you can see basically an L-shaped steel angle. And that angle then gets welded to the panel plate, and it gets welded to the footing plate. And then, according to that drawing, it was then simply just backfilled before the slab was cast. That's all we know to this point, other than the fact that we know that the cracking pattern aligns with that connection spacing. And so the only thing that would cause cracking in those panels in the configuration that you saw there would be corrosion of that joint. So the panels are about 30 feet tall. They're about 10 feet wide, approximately about 8 inches thick. They're insulated panels, pretty common building material. The crack that you see up at the top, the horizontal crack, I believe that that's a similar cause in that the connection between the top of the panel and the precast, pre-stressed concrete floor planks, which actually sits, it's the same kind of connection that you see at the foundation. It sits on top of the floor plank and it sits into the side of the panel. It appears that in those cases it's also corroding. That's a lot easier to deal with because it just means opening up the roof and it exposes it. So the investigation that I have created here for you does the following things. First, we would excavate on the outside of the building to expose the footing and the bottom of the panel. Then we would use a coring machine to core into the panel. The reason we'd use a coring machine that gives us a circular core is because that's the best way to not further damage the panel. And of course, it's not like coring into a new panel. I mean, we're coring into a panel that's already cracked, so we don't want to crack it anymore. So we think that would do the least amount of destruction. Once that core is done all the way back to where that weld plate is in the panel, then we could chip the core out and then get a chance to see what that looks like back there. We might have to remove just a little bit more concrete, but then we would know whether or not there was any protection provided or not. The other thing that that does is then it allows us to basically build a prototype of what would need to be done in order to restore the building to structural health. And if that's successful, then that prototype could then be included in the next phase, which would be developing construction documents to then rehabilitate the building so that not only would you repair the damage that's been done, but you would prevent that same problem from ever occurring in perpetuity. Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how far them panels are going into the soil now, roughly?
About 3 feet.
3 feet? And then when you spoke about the insulation, I noticed when I was touring and I dug out some of the caulking, didn't really have to dig hard, but there's foam,
Yes.
okay?
And that basically is generally a material that they put between the panels to basically keep the air from going in there, and it gives them something to put the sealant against. So they're very likely in there is a material that basically gives you a backup for the sealant.
Okay, it doesn't go behind the panel then?
No, it's just between the.
The joints.
That's right, it's just between the joints. And Dana's absolutely right about this. I mean, you're basically at the end of the sealant life. That would be normal. If it were just the sealant between the panels, this would be easy. Dana could just have somebody go replace the sealant. The difficult part is the corroding connections. And the difficulty here is that those connections between the bottom of the panel and the footing, between the panels on the vertical joint, and at the floor level and then at the roof level, all those connections have to be there in order for this to be stable, because otherwise it's like a house of cards. And so the danger is that under wind load, you might get some panel movement. And if you get panel movement, that's seriously bad. Could even lead to collapse. And essentially, this is a house of cards that's connected the cards are connected at various places. All connected together, it works, it's a perfectly good structural system. But when you begin to have connection problems, then the stability of the building becomes greater at risk all the time.
So are you saying on them beams that are the main support, is there some sort of arm that sticks out from them that connects these panels in place? Is it a metal cross
No,
beam or?
it's again, a metal plate that's cast into the panel, and then there's a
Okay.
weldment made. So in all the cases, you have essentially two metal plates, whether it's the bottom of the panel or at the roof or the floor level, the second floor level or the roof, or between the panels. These are all steel plates embedded in the panels that then have a weldment that hold it together.
Would you think that any of the water getting in behind there and the freezing weather we've had has anything to do with some of the cracking?
Yes.
Because I've noticed some calcium marks on some of the cracks.
That's right. When concrete hydrates, it releases calcium hydroxide, or what the industry calls free lime. And so if you move water through concrete, that free lime will go into solution, and it will, when it rains and the water makes it into the cracks, after the storm is over and it's dry, that moisture wants to weep back out of the building. And when it weeps back out of the building, it carries that calcium hydroxide with it. And so when it gets to the outside of the building, the moisture evaporates, but the calcium hydroxide stays there. So what you're seeing is the free lime from the hydration process, and that's an indication that you've got too much water getting into the building. And though the panel is pre-stressed in the vertical direction, in the horizontal direction, there is a web reinforcing made of steel that holds the panel together. So the more water that goes through those cracks, the more you're going to corrode
mess.
that web reinforcement that's in there, what we call welded wire fabric.
And then one other question, just so everybody here, those cracks, you can't go in like you do on a brick building and cut a section and then repatch it. It's almost gonna need replaced, that panel.
No, you wouldn't do it like you would on a brick building, because in a brick building, you could cut it out, relay it,
Mortar it.
and mortar it in, yes. In this case, the best way to fix the cracks, once all the connection problems are solved, the best way to fix the cracks is to epoxy inject them, and then coat the building. Because this is a precast panel, or precast pre-stressed panel, the less hacking you do on it, the better.
Okay,
So,
I guess my question would be, and I said I was done, but on the epoxy, I have found that, just like the caulking, it has a lifespan of how much?
well, the epoxy, there's lots of epoxies out there. There's epoxies that go in paint and epoxies that goes in glues, but the material that would be used for this kind of structural repair its life would equal the life of the panel. And then you'd want to, of course, recoat the outside of the panel, so that in any places where that epoxy injection might have a pinhole in it, then you'd have a coating over the top of it.
And then one more follow-up, talking about recoating the panels. Shouldn't panels like that have a normal maintenance schedule to be checked and possibly coated?
Well, every building should have a normal maintenance schedule, yes. The advantage to precast pre-stressed panels that unless you have steel corrosion, almost nothing will happen to them. I was a kid engineer working for Clark Dietz Engineers when the wastewater treatment plants were redone here in Champaign, Urbana, and those gigantic round cylinder structures, those are all precast, pre-stressed panels with a sewage on the inside. But all of those connections were basically encased in concrete, and those were built in 1981 or 2. And we've been back for the sanitary district and done some repairs on them, some including latex modified concrete, some including epoxy injection. But those panels will last probably as long as the sanitary district could use that method for sewage treatment. The problem here is that the panel manufacturers found a way to try to get in good with owners and with contractors by telling them that they had something cheaper. They just never explained to them what the downside was. And it's criminal to take a welded steel connection and bury it in the ground.
So you have a lot of different variables there. I do know what little I know about concrete, and that depending on what you're using it up against, the chemicals in the concrete, can interact, whether it be wood or metal. And that also causes some stuff. But I'll let someone ask a question if they have any. Anybody else have a question? Well, then I'm gonna say one more thing. And I brought this up to Dana, but I want it clarified for the group. And we just started a contract with a firm that is supposed to be checking our buildings. And if last meeting, we approved that contract. And in that, there's a section, let me look, because I marked it, brought it, and I talked to Dana about it, C2. And I'm going to read this, and then I'll let Dana respond. On C2, it says we're going to have a comprehensive walkthrough with attention to mechanical, electrical, plumbing components, building envelope, roofs, windows, walls, site features, paved areas, landscape, building finishes, ceilings, paint, walls, flooring, doors, frames, and hardware. Because I remember when we were discussing that. Now, my interpretation of that is in a meeting, I took it to mean, because I know at one time, I think you had done a brief tour of the downtown jail for some structural integrity issues. And when we were drafting this, I think that I even said that, we need to make sure that our buildings are going to be able to withstand another load to them. and/or be long-term if we're going to possibly add on to anything. Because that's always a concern. You can always build new, but if you're building new, you want to make sure what you have is going to last close to what you're building. So I asked Dana about it, and I don't want to speak for Dana or anybody else, and Dana had a real good response to it, but I want this group to hear it up front, not that 2 months from now, everybody's saying, well, wait a minute. So Dana, the floor is yours.
I'll have Van and John chime in afterwards, but when Stan asked the question, my response was that is a very low-key look at plans, structural elements within the drawings for the master plan. Keep in mind, this is a master plan. It's not a architectural review to build or add on to a facility. They are to look at the structure. John's small role with Gorski Reef Stack is virtually that. It's a very small role in looking at the structural graphics of the facility, certainly walking the building, but nothing to the extent that will be necessitated with what we've seen with the building structure as it is currently with cracks.
Mr. Chair, this is the first time I've seen this document, so I'm not in a position to comment. We agreed to help Gorski Reef Stack Architects in any way that they needed, and generally, that would work that when they had a question for us, then we would go address that question. As of right now, I'm not sure what role I will have, if any, during the master plan. But that would be up to them to decide when it would be appropriate for us to participate. So I unfortunately don't have an answer to your question because, as I say, this is the first time I've seen this.
And just for the record, when I was on that committee, my understanding of, like we had you come in before, we had the one study done that I thought was going to encompass that. It did not. We have no true word yet as to the condition of the buildings, because there was talk at one time, could we add on to the downtown up? And then there's been talk of possible addition over here, and then JDC and some other places were mentioned, but they're out. But my concern is that, I, for one, looking at this downtown jail or satellite jail, I would be very cautious proceeding with anything, adding on to it until it's totally where it needs to be and get a good report on it. But with that said, I thought when we discussed this in committee, and Quisenberry just left the room, that was going to be part of the deal, was more of the structural side of it, because as I said to Dana, most people can walk in and see, yes, the walls are painted, the ceilings are good, we don't see any leaks, and the doors open and shut right. I call that a courtesy inspection. I don't call that a comprehensive inspection. So there's misnomers there, I think, on my part maybe. Quisenberry was in some of them meetings. He can relay what he felt about it. But I was really thinking we were going to get an overall, is the building envelope worth saving? Can it be used? Do we have major deficiencies or minor deficiencies? So, Quiz?
Yeah, comprehensive is comprehensive in my mind. I thought about this particularly when considering the amount of money we're going to spend evaluating the downtown jail, which I don't believe has a long-term future as far as our justice system is concerned. But one of the things that made me feel comfortable about that was that we were going to get information that maybe a future tenant or a future purchaser of said building might be able to use to evaluate the structure. If that evaluation does not, building envelope is building envelope. That building envelope has been damaged. It is not keeping the elements out. That's the building envelope. I would expect that to be evaluated as a part of this contract. And if for some reason as a part of this contract, it went in deeper than that kind of evaluation would go, I would consider doing more if it involves like excavation and, pulling parts out to look at the steel and see how rusted it is. That's above and beyond, but I'd like to see how far that evaluation will take us before we spend any more money on a deep dive evaluation.
Thank you. I concur with the quiz that perhaps we're getting ourselves ahead of ourselves a little bit right now. We should get the evaluation that we just recently hired to have done. Probably that evaluation would show that we need more work and more investigation. This problem has not happened last night. It's happened and been ongoing. I don't think that we're risking a failure in the next year. Again, I'm not speaking as an engineer on that one. But my feeling is this problem should have been brought to the committee first for advice and consent to proceed with some further investigation. It was not. As you know, I've been very critical of our hiring practices to hire engineers over the last couple of years. I feel our process is not fair and it's not open. And I feel like we had the time, if we need to go through a formal RFQ on the engineering services. And so for those reasons, I intend to vote no on this tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could clarify, everything that I have done to date regarding this matter is a gift to the county. I've had the rich fortune of providing Champaign County with structural engineering services for decades. And so this started because Mr. Brenner, thank goodness, found the problem. Probably earned his entire year's salary finding this problem for you so that you can address it early enough because, you know, mostly people call me after the panels have started to move, which is not good. So in order to try to help him, I gave Dana a series of things to go find. And then when he found those documents, which are these drawings here, which I will leave with you tonight, then we were able to come to some reasonable conclusion as to why the cracking was occurring. And so, you know, yes, I've provided you with a proposal so that if that's what you wanted to do, you could do. And if you want to go another direction, that's just fine. You should do as you believe is correct. But my role here tonight and up until this point is to simply try to help you understand a little bit what it is that you're up against. And if the committee believes that they need to have a different procedure to retain an engineer, and whether you hire me or somebody else, I think what's important is that you don't let too much time go by before you get this underway. Because it takes time to get it done, and I can't tell you how much longer you have. You know, you may not get movement for some years, and you might get movement next week. There's no way to really predict with as little information as I currently have as to what the risk is. So, but at any rate, at this point, my intention was simply to try to help Dana so that he could understand, and then to bring you information that hopefully would be helpful.
If I may, in response to that, I would say, I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to do those services, and I don't think anybody's quivering whether or not you would do the right thing. I think there's some concern about the study that we've paid for and moving forward with that and then seeing where we're at, because it seems like sometimes we overlap or rush things. The one thing that I don't like about this whole process, and I've said it since I've been on the board and there's been a few others, that our buildings, we need to maintain them. I mean, we really need to go after them. We need to get them back in shape. And like you said, if we get a lot of rain before winter, that gets in them cracks and freezes, we might end up with a panel down on the ground. We don't know. Nobody knows. But it's not going to get any better. So we need to find a solution, and that's what we're looking for. So that's what I think we should be looking at. It's just a question of, are we doing the right thing? Because it seems like all we've done, and I told Dana this, is we fight fires. We have so many buildings that need so much, and this county board's got to take some of the blame, all of us sitting here and all of them on the full board. We take that money and we put it other places, much like state government and federal government, instead of maintaining what we have. And I, for one, don't want to add more stock to our facilities until we have what we have under control. And we have some other issues. This isn't the only one. So we're on the right track. It's just how are we going to attack that? And I'm going to make a motion before anybody else, and I'll let you speak, Mr. Anderson, but I recommend, or I make a motion that we forward this on to the full board with no recommendation so that it can be aired and everybody hear the same thing we've heard, instead of this committee saying yes or no at this time. Do I have a second? Amendment, or can I amend the motion? Because from what I'm hearing here right now, it'll probably get killed.
So you could amend the motion, or you could ask for an amendment to the motion to forward it to the full board without recommendation from committee. You could ask for that amendment from the committee.
Then I misworded. Do I have a second?
I'll make that amendment
Okay,
to show the chair.
there you go. So we have a motion and a second on that amendment, and Van, you needed to speak.
Well, I just wanted to let the committee know how we got to this point because of the purchasing regulations, how we are.
Because he didn't get called on before the amendment was made.
told him he could speak after I made that, so I'm allowing that. Go ahead.
Are we okay?
Go ahead.
So, thank you. But I just wanted to clarify, when Dana brought this problem to us and he showed us how severe the water infiltration was, our initial scope of work was going to be to get a contractor out, and Dana started looking into, this was a bid process for having the joints sealed properly. And then when he did further walk arounds and saw this cracking and he came to the conclusion it's a much more serious problem than just fixing the joints, especially when you have the underground joints. One of our problems with bringing it to the committee was Dana could not find the plans, and he did everything he possibly could. He called the companies that made the precast panels to find out that they were out of business. Tried to follow up with the architectural engineering firm that designed the panels and found out that they had been bought out, and that the new company, the larger parent company, only keeps plans for 10 years. So he went down every possible avenue trying to get the information so we could move forward. Our goal was to get those cracks, the joints sealed before winter so that we could prevent additional damage to the panels. But when it came out that we had a much bigger problem, the problem became, how do we get enough information so we know what's going on with the panels so that we can even then either do whatever fixes we needed and then get those joints sealed. And so one method of doing that is to, and it's when you look at the qualification-based selection procedures in Illinois statute, it allows you to work with a firm that you have a satisfactory relationship for services with, without going out for an RFQ on each individual project. And then one of the reasons we chose to do that, to go directly to a firm we had a relationship with, was multifold. We have an expert on precast panels that was available. And we're trying to get that portion of the work done so that we could actually get those joints taken care of before winter. Obviously now, with the type of study that it's turning out to be, we most likely will not complete everything this year, even with approval to go forward at this time or at the board meeting. It's going to be a long, involved project, it looks like. And but it's important to note that we are fighting fires, and I think this is a big fire that sprang up for us when Dana actually took a close look at it and found the magnitude of the damage to those panels already. We got a large investment in that facility, and we need to protect that. We need to protect the operations that are in the facility. And so that's one of the reasons why we ended up where we are today. It wasn't trying to go around the committee or do something that the committee didn't have a say in. It was trying to take care of a very serious problem as expeditiously as possible within the rules that we have to follow.
Yeah, actually, I really appreciate kind of the way Dana and Van handled this because I did get, the story totally makes sense to me, and you handled it right. However, I completely agree with my compadres over here that if we commissioned a 150,000+
Yeah, and I will also say that Dana and Van, I appreciate how you approached this. I don't think you did anything wrong. I just think that we are already spending some money, and and as you point out, that timing is such that we probably wouldn't be getting to a resolution before winter anyway. That would be my concern, is if we could do something that would allow us to act in time to prevent another winter's freezing and thawing to do whatever additional damage it's going to do, I might be persuaded to do that. But I would I would certainly like to have John here do that examination, do that work, because I trust his advice. But I think we need to see, I would prefer to see what we get out of our existing engagement before we take that additional step.
Stan, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had occasion to talk with Dana and Van late last week about this problem, and they brought some pictures. And at that time, I complimented both of them for doing their job, bringing this to our attention. And I still stand by that. Thank you.
That's before I call on you. And I concur. I don't think anybody's saying anybody isn't doing a good job, but I am going to raise the flag that I've been on this board 10 years. Those cracks, as Gary said earlier, didn't happen yesterday or last night. It's a shame that we pay the staff to maintain the things they're supposed to, and yet this got by everybody. And now it's an emergency. And our problem is that we have a list of things that I keep saying, roofs, chillers, generators, I can go on down, that we keep putting on the back burner, and our buildings are deteriorating. And until we get a hold on it, this county board has to look at this whole facility thing and be more vigilant in making sure that we are setting money aside to do the things we need to do to keep them from doing this. And the argument that things ought to last 20 years, 10 years, or whatever it may be, the sad thing is with the type of weather we have here, it's ongoing all the time. You might have strong winds, what have you. I'm singing to the choir. But I'm amiss that that level of deterioration happened under somebody's watch. I can't believe it. Patsy.
Speaking to the amendment, would it be possible when this goes, I'm assuming the committee will pass it to the full board without a recommendation, that we have sufficient expertise in the room should our fellow county board members want to ask some questions in depth?
Yeah, I would suspect we will talk to Gorski Reef Stack and discuss this with them. And if it's going to be on the full board's agenda, then we'll ask for their presence.
Any other questions? Mr. Rosales?
Well, I tend to concur with all of you, indicating that when I saw it on the agenda, I was sort of surprised because I've said, well, I thought we were hiring a contractor that would oversee that and look and perhaps talk with John to see, since he has worked with us before, to see how they could collaborate and work together. But I think what John is proposing is only to research what the problem is. We don't know what the problem is. We went to fix the joints and we found the cracks. But in the scope of things, we wanted to spend this additional money on those cracks when possibly other buildings like the downtown jail needs immediate work on other things that may be reconsidered by this board to invest, to make that investment in. I don't know if those cracks will be, opened tomorrow, or with, another earthquake might happen in Madrid's fault that might cause one of those panels to come down, and half of the people be running across the court. I don't think it will get to that point, but I do believe that we need to put things in perspective. I think it's been over a year now that Gary has requested of this board to begin to create a fund for engineering services on not only the downtown jail or the satellite jail, but on all of our buildings, so that we could have a strategic plan that we could know what comes first, what comes second, and what comes third. And I think you're right, Stan, that we keep deviating from some of the issues that may be crucial because we don't know what's crucial. It seems like the chillers were crucial, and we're an emergency because we need to go ahead and put, a new heating system because the winter is coming, and the fencing and all of that is we need to do that right away. So I think that we need to put it in perspective. I personally would like John to look into the matter that he explained today. I think that, I'm sorry, your name again is?
John Fraunhofer.
John, but yours is? Dan Henderson had indicated that since we worked with a reputable company before, we're just doing an investigation. We're not doing construction. We're not going to be building anything. We're not going to be repairing anything. We just want to see those cracks and if it's the foundation that is bad or not. Would Gorski do what you had indicated, which is doing that in-depth investigation, or would it do just a cursory look at the envelope of the building? I would imagine that they probably will not be looking 3 feet under the ground, looking for the foundation to see if it's cracked, to see if those brackets or braces are rusted, or how long have they been rusted, or if it's really an emergency, we need to jump on that right now. So I would agree to move this onto the board, and hopefully we could have further discussion there. But I would like to look into it a little bit further. I don't think that the Gorski contract is going to look at this particular or specific problem right now, and I would like to see some kind of resolution as to what the status of those cracks are. Right now, it's a guess and see. It may happen next week, it may not happen next week.
Yeah, and I think that's the value of passing it to the full board without recommendation, because that gives us, it has to be approved by the full board in any case, correct? So that gives us time to learn more information that would say, no, we absolutely have to do that, or get feedback from our contractors that they have no intention of doing something like that, and changing our minds, some of us anyway.
I suspect that as part of the study that Gorski Reef Stack will be doing is they will call us to our attention and recommend exactly what John's suggesting we do. And at that point in time, we'll probably have to go with a separate contract or an addition to the Gorski Reef Stack. The investigation, though, will tell us what we might need to do. But from that point forward, you have to then go into design and construction documents. So it gets a lot more complicated once you find out what you might need to do and what the problem specifically is. So be prepared for more of these shocks. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's one of the things the reason that we should maybe take a pause here and think a little bit harder about this, because if the end result is we have to take a couple of those walls out to add a health care pod to that building, we don't want to have just repaired it, So big picture is important here.
Well, my comments are not on the amendment, and comments are supposed to be on the amendment at this point in time. When you all have that vote, I have some comments on the full motion.
Well, I did, but it doesn't all pertain just to the amendment. First of all, I think vaguely it might. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm frustrated and to the point that I'm ready to throw up my hands. I, as you all know, served on the Facilities Committee for 100 years, it seemed like, and we never accomplished a whole lot. But we did spend a lot of money. And we're still spending a lot of money, and we're still not accomplishing very much, so I'm not sure I've been very much value to the county board. But this, if we would have, if you all would agree to this would have been the third study we were doing on this, and at some point, you got to quit studying and start acting. And I'm not smart enough to know what to do, but I really thought, as a board member, that the plan that we approved was going to at least tell us what we needed to do with these facilities. We asked for that before we started out with Berkeley, California, giving us a study that was supposed to talk about the buildings, which we never got anything from him, except that the downtown jail was no good, we need to get rid of it, basically. And so we come up with this next study that we approved so we could find out for sure what our buildings were like, including the satellite jail. And now we decided that evidently we weren't broad enough in our scope, that we're going to have to pay another substantial sum of money to get this investigated again. John Q. taxpayers getting taken down the road, and I'm not going to be part of it. And I thank you all for postponing this to the full board, and I'll have more to say there. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple of concerns. One is, I think Quiz just touched on it, and that's the macro situation. It seems clear to me we're on a path. If there's going to be any work done on the jail, it's going to be done on the satellite jail. And we really need to see what that potential design is going to be before we go in and spend a great deal of money marching around the building and repairing this. From the explanation of John, it seems to me that it really isn't a maintenance situation, it really is a construction situation, and the way it was, the foundation was done. I mean, you could have been painting those walls, but that's not going to stop that cracking, from what I understand. Okay, so then to me, the macro takeaway, we've had the courthouse, we have the jail, we have the downtown jail, and that is we're paying for the sins of our fathers. And it is imperative that we start really making good, solid decisions related to any building that we do. And I hope that we all take that away as we go ahead and decide on building whatever we do on a jail.
Based upon what I've heard and what I've read, well, I'm not going to do a motion to defer this to the next board. I am going to vote no on this amendment because I don't think this is ready yet for the full board. I think that further investigation is going to be required based upon the other study that's in place, and I don't want to have the full board be entangled with this type of discussion when I don't think it's going to be very fruitful, and it's probably going to be voted, it's going to be probably passed anyways at that point. Passed as in not passed, meaning pushed off to the next full board or pushed back to this committee. So I'd ultimately recommend that while this is an amendment, I'd recommend voting against this amendment and voting for deferral once we get back to the main motion. That would be my recommendation at this point.
In response to you, Mr. Kibler, I would just say that a lot of times when I'm at those meetings, and Mr. Rosales is one that often says it, he never heard about it, it's just coming to him, he lacks the information. The full board is elected by their people out there. They hear it like we all do. I think it's the way to go. If they kick it back to us, they kick it back to us, but they need to hear the same things we're hearing at this point so everybody is aware of the situation, because I didn't even know about all this until I got called by Dana and we went out there. I bet there's other county board members that don't even know where the satellite jail may be located. So I think it's a good thing to pass information on. And with that, I'm going to call the vote. We have an amendment on the floor to send this to the full board without a recommendation. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes.
Now, that was the amendment.
Now we go back to
The amended main motion.
and that is,
To send this to the board without a recommendation.
oh, I just said that.
I know, we amended it.
That's
to
what we
make it like
changed
that.
the motion to.
Oh,
One more time.
so now what do I gotta call for?
Same vote.
Same vote. Here we go, because Mr. James got ahead of himself. I got a call for a vote. We got the amended motion on the floor to send this to the full board without recommendation from this committee. All those in favor?
Clarification.
Sure.
So when you do this, because you don't do this very frequently, we have to prepare the county board agenda, and the county board has to have a resolution upon which to vote. So we'll put in the resolution that the committee forwarded this to the county board without recommendation, but I have to prepare the resolution stating that the county board hereby authorizes the contract. You can change it. I just don't want you to think we're playing with your action when we write the resolution, okay? Because
That's
we have to have a
understandable.
resolution on the agenda.
Right, because that would be what was gonna be voted on for the award the contract.
Exactly. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, we just
Okay.
don't wanna make a recommendation at this point. Let the
Right.
full board hear it.
And we'll acknowledge that in the resolution, but then for the now therefore, it would indicate that the county board was recommending approval, and then they don't, if they don't do it, they don't do it.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the vote. All those in favor of sending it forward? Aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Passes. Goes to the full board. Thank you. Moving right along. Thank you, sir, for coming tonight and answering our questions.
John, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Number 9, approval of the Brookings Administrative Center Energy Efficient Contract by Alpha Controls and Services LLC. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and second. Discussion. Quisenberry.
Is this at all informed by the Illinois Green Business Association study that we've been undertaking?
Is it, I'm sorry, is it?
Has it been informed at all by the Illinois Green Business Association
They're aware.
investigation?
They are aware of what we're doing they're aware of what we're doing as we continue down the certification. They're in the process. Ryan Wolber's taken another job with another energy form. In fact, I meet with him on Friday just to see who they're going to assign to our account. But yes, Ryan was aware that we were moving towards this. They're aware that it has not been approved yet to move forward.
So will it contribute to our score?
Certainly.
Okay, I just want to point out that in this summary, and Dana pointed this out, and we talked about it, that this will only happen if we get pre-approval of the rebate by DCEO before we proceed with the project. So we would get pre-approval that it's going to happen and we'll get a rebate of some sort, hopefully. So I wanted that on the notes. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Dana.
The documentation to DCEO has been submitted. Have not received anything back, but it was submitted late last week, I believe. Similarly, we'll hear again in a second, but we did receive confirmation back from them on our grant approval for the chiller project. So we're optimistic. 75% of the project is $104,000 and some change. If we're fortunate to get that, which we're very hopeful, that takes care of a lot of the project, obviously.
So the question would be, because it was asked of me, you're not going to sign, because there's a time limit on that contract, 45 days, you're not going to sign a contract until we hear back from DECO, right?
Correct.
So if the contract time limit expires, will they grant an extension?
Alpha, I'm sure will extend. They have no problem with that. We heard back within about 20, 25 days on the chiller submittal. So, 30 days out, if we hear something, we'll be in great shape.
Any other questions? Gary?
Should this be written so that as part of our resolution, that it will not go forward unless it goes pre-approved. And if you read Alpha's contract, there's nothing in there to indicate that. And once we adopt a contract, I'm not sure whether we as a county board have got the right to rescind it without going back. And that's why I would say maybe there should be a separate resolution with this, awarding this contract subject to that clause in there. Now, help me, Deb, if I need some help on that. Thank you.
I think you could accomplish that by simply indicating that, and we can do this in the resolution if we need to, that the contract will be signed upon notification by DCEO that the funding has been awarded. It doesn't have, I don't think it has to actually be in the contract, but the direction that the board gives to Dana for signing the contract can include that.
Thank you.
That's what it was intended with the last sentence in the summary. Pre-approval of the rebate by DCEO is a condition of proceeding with the project at this time. So that was certainly the intent.
Any other questions? Patsy?
My question or my comment bears on the factor of this contract and the preceding contract being done without any outside bidding and being based on what Van has mentioned, that we've worked with these people before and therefore it's in good stead and we can go ahead in this manner. I understand that argument, but we can start building that argument forever with the county and not opening up the possibilities of other companies being able to bid for work with the county. And I certainly hope somewhere along the line we start having that conversation and figure out how we do it in a broader way than just saying, oh, we've worked with this company before, and ergo then we can do it again.
Dana?
Patsy, we've got two companies who actually we do work with that provide similar products for controls of mechanicals. Intech out of Peoria and Alpha here. Alpha controls at the courthouse. Alpha also is here with the new chillers that were installed. Intech is at JDC and at the nursing home. So we do have, as we are allowed, a long-standing, but the more reason that we went with Alpha was because of the controls that were put in for the chillers. Made it a lot easier to go that direction with Alpha. We're currently talking with Intech about the JDC controls that are outdated and need to be replaced. That's part of our capital asset project replacement, one of our projects for this year. So we will do that. We've continued to look for other companies who might be in business along those lines, and there are others. We'll continue to do that.
Jeff?
Dana, you may have answered my question. I'm going to hit on something Patsy just mentioned, that in the notice from Van, it says there are two firms servicing county facilities that could provide the service. I would love to see something of this breadth and this volume of dollars be more looked at other providers if they're available. If I don't necessarily like to go back into the same people over and over again because it does provide favoritism to some degree. But I want to make this as transparent and open as possible. So when you made, or actually it was Van that wrote this, but I assume that there are other people inside Champaign County that could do this service other than the two that are mentioned in this memo. Is that correct? And if so, have we had a chance to, when's the last time we've reached out to those organizations to see if they'd be able to do it at a perhaps even at lower cost? Not saying we're always going for low cost, but just giving somebody else a chance to bite at the apple.
We have continued. CTS is another company. They're based out of St. Louis, I believe, that has controls. Met with them about a month ago. You know, we went down the Alpha Control route with the chillers, and their controls are proprietary. So when we made that decision, that did kind of force our hand to stay with Alpha, who is a terrific company, providing great service. They're also here in Champaign. But we'll continue to look as we look towards the future. There are other buildings that need control systems. The courthouse certainly needs to be updated with their controls for both buildings. We'll take a look at JDC. If we're not happy with Intech, we may do basically what Patsy just mentioned, is just take it out to an RFQ.
And if I may, in follow-up to that, that's one thing that when I've done contracts, even though I might get a heck of a good price from an outside firm, I've got to make sure that I have someone that if I call them, I'll get a good response time.
If I could just ask, this also has an impact on our maintenance staff, right? If we have different controls in every building, that requires a lot of additional training and a lot of additional knowledge by all of our maintenance workers who work on these systems. So that's an additional consideration that we have to look at when we're looking at these issues.
Just so everybody knows. Quiz?
Yeah, I agree with the idea of having open opportunity to do this kind of work. But I also know that when you buy a piece of equipment from one company and then you want to put in the controls, have a different company come and put that in, now you have two people to go to if there's a problem with the system. And at times, it's more important that the system work than that we do everything we possibly do to spread the work around. The side effect of having multiple people involved, and my experience with the telecommunications industry was an indicator of this, is as many people are involved, that's how many fingers you can have pointing in different directions when there's a problem with the system. And so in this kind of situation, when we took that step to buy the chillers through Alpha, I think we committed to having a system that ran it come through Alpha, and I don't have a problem with that.
Anybody else? We have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Dana. Moving right along, number 10, approval of ITB 2014-007, installation of a generator backup system for the IT network at the Brookins Administration Center. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. Moving right along. Thank you for showing up, Andy. It's much appreciated, and I like the 007 little tag there. Facilities Director's Report.
Let me quickly pass out just a couple of pieces. You want to go that one?
Sure.
Oops,
3 that way.
oops.
1 here.
Never mind, never mind.
Never mind. Well, they got them.
Never, all right, pass them around the room. They can
Oh, that's
pass those.
pictures of your new house.
Yeah, it's got a hole in it. Take that back. I'll just send that around the room, if you will. I spoke earlier about the notification from DCEO on the Brookins chillers. That's in that page that's going around the room. Speaking of the chillers, if any of you noticed as you pulled into the parking lot this evening, they are both here. Actually, one of them is functioning. The 90-ton unit was turned on about 8 days ago and is providing chilled water for both pod 200 and pod 300. It's much quieter and doing a nice job. The 100-ton unit showed up last Friday, was put in place that same day, and they're busy connecting all the electrical connections. New boxes been put in. They're just waiting on the pipe fitters to finish about 20, 25 feet of pipe, the two chiller lines, both the intake and return. We believe tomorrow evening sometime they will pump it full of fluid and then engage it and then tweak it on Thursday morning. So by the end of Thursday, it should be up and running. And hopefully the hot weather will come back to Champaign, Urbana, and we'll all be better off with the new chillers. Update, any questions on the chillers? Okay. Update on the Elias project. I passed around some photos. It's down. If anyone has driven by, it's a reminder that's the attachment to the annex. It's on the south side of the building. It's about 5,500 square feet. Diggett of Champaign was the contractor. On the 25th of July, we received our permit that we had been waiting for 40 to 5 days from the city of Urbana. The building virtually was down by Wednesday of last week, and they've been sorting through separating steel, concrete, bricks, et cetera. It is probably about within about 20% of being completely out of there in terms of the rubble. They still have work to do in pulling out the crawl space and doing the electric bank steam tunnel work, which they also have to pull out. But most of the work should be done within the next 2 weeks. They've been great to work with, and you know, once they got the permit from the city of Urbana, they've kind of flown through the project. So.
How are they going to cap that all off, Dana, when it's all?
They're filling in where the building was attached that they've pulled down. They will come back in and re-brick where the openings were. There is some concrete that looks like it was poured on the exterior of the brick that is facing due east, which will be seen by the interior of Elias. So as you're looking from, if you've been in Elias, in their large meeting rooms, you'll see that face. So we're going to try and take that off carefully of the brick. If we can't, we'll put a drive-it material up over it that's already on the building in several locations to hide it and make it look better. It's going to be watertight, obviously. Steam tunnel will be closed off permanently. All the mechanicals have been terminated and will be closed off, so water will not be able to migrate into either the crawl space of the existing structure or any of the utilities that were disconnected.
Jay, you had a question?
A couple of questions, if I could. Why, it seemed like it was longer than 45 days. Was there a reason Urbana held us up that long? Just because they could?
They wanted their permit fees, which Diggett did pay for. But on the books, the building, not what we took down, but what it's adjacent to, qualifies in 2 of the 3 legs for historic prevention. And they had a 45-day posting notice waiting to see if anybody responded with complaints or issues. That's basically what the 45-day wait is. IGW was not aware of that for the city of Urbana. I was not aware of that myself. I now know.
And a follow-up, if I could, is the entire facility now being used by Elias?
Yes, they rent the entire structure. They remodeled that front end, the northeast portion, which is probably a third of the building, roughly, maybe 40% of the building. The remainder that is as is, basically, they use for training of their officers, whether it's police officers of any extent or firefighters. They do also that type of training. The building, I will get in front of this group, is not in very good shape. The roof structure, material on the 2-story original building, as well as the 2-story units and the annex, all need to be replaced, and it should have been done some time ago, frankly, but it leaks badly. The fascia is in trouble. At one time, there were copper gutters that surrounded the building with downspouts. I don't know when, but probably many years ago, the copper downspouts were pulled off and somebody, turned them in for revenue. So you've got water draining from the downspouts that do work straight onto the brick. Well, what does that cause? Well, that's eating away and chipping away at the mortar, so there's a lot of tuck pointing that needs to be done with the building as well. So there's some issues and serious issues with that structure. Not necessarily to the extent possibly of the satellite jail, but let it be known that there are problems there that will have to be addressed if we're going to keep that facility in structure. And currently, it is leased by Elias, and they have a 5-year contract, is my understanding.
One more question, and I promise I'll quit. How long do we think it'll be rentable space? ILS at some point isn't going to want it if the roof caves in, I assume. and
Well,
we don't get-
it will not be usable if the roof caves in. They'll be able to use it one time or two for training purposes of rescue, but yes, they would not be able to use the space as it is currently being used. They love the space because it's adaptable. They can change the furniture and the surroundings and close and open doors, and it really creates a great environment that is constantly changing for their training purposes. So they really enjoy and like the facility. The heat works. Yeah, we need a couple of new boilers, but the building envelope needs to be protected and some work done on it in the very near future. Or we'll be coming to you to say we need to tear down more of the building. Which is basically what happened with the annex. It leaked so badly, mold came about. Certainly, there's some other things that are in there. There's asbestos and probably some lead and paint and window caulking and flooring material. But those things will need to be identified in the near future as well. So, lots of opportunities.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on.
Courthouse compressor. This is an item that did not come to you. We had a compressor, lost it. It actually went down sometime last summer at the courthouse. So we were out of the big chiller on the roof. We were operating with 3 compressors. Building was working. Fortunately, this summer has been light. We went out and got 3 prices. They range from about $40,000 to $28,000 to $20,000. We went with a local contractor with a lower price, lifted it up by a crane. It'll be 10 days ago now, and we also wanted to investigate what was the cause of the compressor because it's roughly 10 years old, and what we think happened, because we've had to replace it, is that each of the compressors has an oil pump and an oil heater. And we think that the oil heater went bad, and that probably blew the head on the compressor. We've asked the contractor who's replacing it for us if there's any way to put a warning system, whether it be triggered to the control system that Alpha has at the building, or some sort of alarm system so that we could be notified should we have this and have an opportunity to shut it down prior to losing a compressor. They're obviously expensive. And an oil pump, sump pump, and a heater are not very expensive in comparison. So,
When you said the price, 20 to 40,000.
that was a range.
But was that just the compressor or was
That
that
was
labor?
all the work.
All the work?
Yeah, the compressor was actually in the
Because you
probably
needed a
the,
crane to get it up there.
yeah, the compressor
They
was in that $15,000 category. He had a crane that had to reach up there, had a boom of about 110 feet to get it up there and in position, and that's just not straight. That's going at an angle, so it gets over the roofing materials and all the other equipment. That compressor weighs about 1,800 pounds. So it's got to be lifted and moved actually into the location, which also means you have to take out the old one. So,
And one follow-up question, do we have many more compressors at our buildings that may be needing service? Or do you know?
well, They're checked, we change the oil on them once a year. You know, we do a pretty good job, I think, of following up. This was something that we had not experienced before, or our maintenance staff or skilled trade folks. Hence our request to see if there's any type of warning system that can be attached to, you know, the heater, which I hate to say it, but it's, you know, it's probably a, you know, $50
fail.
part.
But I mean, roughly how many other compressors do you think we have that we maintain?
A bunch. I couldn't
Give me
put a
that.
number on them. I
Well,
mean, there's,
I just want
there's,
this group to know that
there's
that's
8 here in this
ongoing.
building with the 2 compressors. There's probably 6 over at the downtown jail. Over here at the satellite jail, there's probably 10. You know, every building that's got a chilled water
Well, I was just
has
going
got
by your
2 to
life
4.
expectancy.
Yeah.
And, you know, the cost that we could incur.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on.
Masonry project at the courthouse, we are rapidly, finally finishing. All the exterior water protection agents have been applied. All of the joints have been sealed. They've got 2 wing walls to finish up, actually, with tuck pointing that were an add at the end of the project, just because they were falling down and weren't going to get touched, which didn't make a lot of sense. We have a walkthrough on Thursday morning to finalize the punch list for them to look at, but they should be out of here within the next week to 10 days. They were terrific, been a great contractor. They do good work. They were very, very accommodating of our judicial staff. As you might expect, they work a schedule normally Monday through Friday, same days that by chance that court is in session, not discounting the bail court on Saturday and Sunday. And the judicial staff parks right next to the building where we had to do a lot of the work. So they were very accommodated. They worked a number of Saturdays and actually came in on a few Sundays. So they get kudos. They were absolutely terrific to work through, and we got it done.
It's nice to see a project getting done timely.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay.
Last item I'm going to pass on at this point because of several things. We are putting together, and several of you talked about the desire, which is also our desire and my goal, and a goal that was outlined to me when I took this job, was to put together a complete listing of capital projects, both mechanicals, electrical systems, fire systems, building envelopes, parking lots, sidewalks, you name it, and try to prioritize based upon what needs to be done first. A lot of those are based upon age. Some of them are based upon, like in the nursing home. As we look at those projects, and GHR is conducting a very thorough study of all the mechanicals, all the systems at the nursing home for us that the nursing home is paying for. That will detail out in 3 levels. It's the first level is basically life safety. What are those issues? Well, we know that there's a boiler issue with the laundry, and there's one of the boilers that's been decommissioned. That's life safety. Second would be code compliance. What do we need to do to stay compliant to be allowed to stay in business? And then the third would be any energy efficiency ranking. So those are kind of the 3 levels that we looked at the nursing home. We're also doing that internally with our own projects and buildings. So by the end of the month, we'll have a pretty good line of where we're at and be able to share that as we go through our budgeting process. GHR, I think we're getting a first draft later in the week of their information. I've got a local roofer who's basically donating his time and investigating the roofs for us. We know the age, we know the square footage. Like to be able to state for the future, what kind of roof do we want to replace when we look to replace? Whether it's EPDM, is it ballasted, is it hopefully a white rubber versus a dark that will bounce that heat off versus retaining it like all of our roofs do? But anyway, we're going to look at all of our roofs and get pictures, photographic evidence of where we're at, and then kind of put that together in our master projects listing. And but I anticipate having that by the end of the month. So,
Any questions on that, even though we're passing it on? Thank you, Dana, for your report, and thanks for, working at getting all this in line. Another 5 years, you'll have it down pat. Other business. Anybody have any other business that's on the committee first? Nobody? Patsy?
I just want to mention a tip of the hat to Dana for so effectively and efficiently going after funds from DCEO for the county.
Chair's report. As we all know, budget planning's coming up. I'm going to be probably off this board late October, I assume, after the election in November. But I want to just stress and say that when you look at that budget, make sure that you're thinking about our buildings and some of the things that I would like to throw out, and it may not set well with a few of you. We've built a lot of buildings in the 10 years I've been here. And maybe we need to take a deep breath and have a moratorium on any more buildings until we get our stock at least 75% of where it needs to be. Something to think about. The other thing I've always asked about and looked into, and the resolution to on the quarter-cent safety tax, due to the money that goes to the social groups out of that, it was in the resolution form, but that resolution was also supposed to sunset, which was overrode by a board back in '06 or '05, whenever it was. I think that also you might want to look at the funds that are going out and say, we might put a moratorium on that for 2 to 5 years and put it back into our buildings where it's desperately needed. Because after listening to Dana, the things we talk about, those are the big money items. We also have interior painting, we have carpeting, we have windows. The buildings have been let go for way too long. And granted, I don't like seeing money being spent on buildings any more than anybody else, but if we don't take care of them, we're going to have bigger and bigger headaches, as you're hearing. And we can't control the weather. We can't control if there's an earthquake. We've got no reserve. And, there's a lot of times I often wonder if something major happened, what would we do as a county? We'd be scrambling. And I see too many buildings sometimes that are good buildings just go to waste because they're not maintained. I can point to Chanute Air Force Base. We tear a lot of them down. Buildings I maintain, as I told Dana, were built in the 40s. If we wouldn't have had the foresight to start capital improvements with roofs, water heaters, heating, and other work, those buildings have been long gone, because there's been buildings from the 70s and 80s that have been tore down. So I'm just trying to tell this board, when that budget planning comes around, I know there's a lot of good programs out there. I think they're well worth their stock, but we've got to focus on what we need here, and yet help where we can. But until we get these back, you'll always be fighting fires, as I say. You'll always be arguing about what we should do, and you're never really going to have the funds you need until you start setting them aside. So that's my pitch, as the chair's report. As far as consent, and I'm not sure about this, but I always throw them out there, we did do number 9 and 10. So that goes on consent. So I hope that everybody does that. And the next thing is, and I do appreciate everybody coming and listening, is our next meeting would be September the 2nd, Tuesday at 6 p.m., and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.